I'm Elin Andersson, a 24-year-old graphic designer in Stockholm, where my illustrations once danced across the pages of indie art magazines, turning fleeting ideas into vibrant stories. In the city's creative circles, I was carving a name for myself, my sketches a blend of Nordic minimalism and raw emotion. But my light was perpetually dimmed by my older sister, Freja Nilsson, a 27-year-old PR consultant whose charisma could charm a room or cut it to pieces. Freja didn't just live, she dominated, her presence as sharp and unyielding as a Scandinavian winter. From our childhood in a cozy apartment overlooking Stockholm's archipelago, she treated me as her rival, a shadow to outshine. My favorite porcelain doll with its hand-stitched dress vanished into her room. My school art awards, painstakingly earned, were accidentally misplaced after her own didn't measure up. Even Lukas, my first crush at 16, a lanky musician with a guitar and a shy smile, was hers by the end of summer, his songs now dedicated to her. Each victory came with that smirk, cold as frost on a January window, and her taunting words, "What can I do, Elin? No one resists me." Growing up, I learned to navigate her games, keeping my dreams small to avoid her grasp. Our mother, a librarian who cherished harmony, saw Freja's antics as sisterly competition, urging me to forgive her fire. But it wasn't just fire, it was a calculated need to win, to prove she was the brighter star. In our teens, Freja's charm turned heads at school dances, her laughter a magnet for attention, while I sketched in quiet corners, my pencil tracing the world I wished for. By the time I moved out to study design at Konstfack, I thought distance would dull her edge. I was wrong. Freja, now a rising PR consultant orchestrating campaigns for Stockholm's elite, found new ways to eclipse me. Her apartment in Östermalm, all sleek glass and designer furniture, was a stage for her triumphs, while mine in Södermalm, cluttered with sketchbooks and coffee mugs, felt like a refuge from her spotlight. Last spring, her rivalry took a darker turn. I'd been dating Victor Berg, a 26-year-old chef whose inventive dishes were earning whispers of Michelin stars. Our month together was a whirlwind of late-night tastings at his Gamla restaurant, his warm smile thawing the insecurities Freja had planted. But Freja noticed. One evening, as I sat sketching in my favorite cafe, my phone buzzed with her message. Photos of her and Victor, his arm around her, captioned "True Love." Her voice echoed in my memory. No one resists me, and I felt the familiar sting of defeat. She didn't love him, she loved taking what was mine. The Stockholm skyline glittered outside, its beauty mocking my fractured heart. I could have crumbled, let her win again, but something snapped. I closed my sketchbook, my fingers tracing the lines of a new resolve. Freja thought she knew my limits, but this time I'd rewrite the rules of her game, and the man she'd secretly loved for years, Nils Eriksson, would be my first move. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Last spring, the air in Stockholm was thick with the promise of renewal, the kind that makes you believe in fresh starts. I thought I'd found one with Victor Berg, a 26-year-old chef whose culinary creations were turning heads in Gamla competitive restaurant scene. His warm smile, framed by a scruffy beard, and his quiet ambition to earn a Michelin star had drawn me in. For a month, we'd shared stolen moments, late-night tastings of his experimental dishes, laughter over shared plates of lingonberry-drizzled venison, and walks along the waterfront where the city's lights danced on the Baltic Sea. Victor felt like a safe harbor, a man untouched by my sister Freja's orbit. I should have known better. Freja Nilsson, my 27-year-old sister and a PR consultant with a knack for stealing the spotlight, had always seen my happiness as a challenge to conquer. One chilly April evening, as I sat in my Sodermalm apartment sketching a logo for a local cafe, my phone lit up with Freja's name. The message was a dagger. Photos of her and Victor, their arms entwined outside his restaurant, her lips curved in that familiar, triumphant smirk. The caption read, "True love," as if my month with Victor, my hopes, my vulnerability were pieces in her endless game. "What can I do, Ellen?" Her voice echoed in my mind, that mocking refrain from childhood when she'd taken my dolls, my awards, my first love, Lukas. Freja didn't want Victor. She wanted to win, to prove I'd always be second best. My sketchbook fell to the floor, the pencil lines blurring through tears. But as the city's church bells tolled in the distance, something shifted. I wasn't a child anymore, hiding my hurt. This time, I'd rewrite the rules. I turned to Nils Eriksson, a 25-year-old photographer whose quiet intensity had haunted Freja's dreams for 5 years. I'd first noticed him at a university gallery opening during our freshman year at Konstfack. A drunken classmate had cornered a girl, his voice rising, but Nils stepped in, his steely gaze and calm command, "Enough!" stopping the scene cold. Freja, standing nearby in a sequin dress, had been transfixed, her eyes lingering on him long after. I'd admired him too, drawn to his courage and the depth in his photographs, which captured Stockholm's raw beauty, its icy canals, its shadowed alleys, in ways that felt like poetry. But I'd kept my distance, too shy, too overshadowed by Freja's radiance. Now, with Victor gone, I saw an opportunity not just to hurt Freja, but to claim something real for myself. Nils and I grew close over late-night coffees in Gamla Stan's cobblestone cafes, where candlelit windows glowed against the Nordic dusk. Our conversations flowed from art to dreams, his quiet humor thawing my guarded heart. I'd briefly dated Victor to test my own feelings, a reckless move to see if I could move on from Freja's shadow. But when Nils found out, his jealousy broke through. One evening, outside a cafe on Stortorget Square, his voice trembled, his dark eyes flashing. "Why him, Ellen? Why someone else?" The rawness in his question shattered the walls between us. That night, under a sky streaked with the faint green of the aurora, we kissed, and he became my anchor, protective, loyal, a man Freja couldn't touch. Or so I thought. Freja, true to form, sensed my happiness like a predator scents blood. She started appearing at my favorite haunts, the cozy bookshop on Drottninggatan, the jazz bar where I sketched on weekends, her floral perfume lingering like a challenge. One evening, she invited Nils and me to dinner at a sleek Östermalm restaurant, its minimalist decor a perfect stage for her performance. She arrived in a red dress, its neckline daring, her blonde hair cascading in perfect waves. As we sat at a table overlooking the city's twinkling skyline, her smile turned predatory. "Nils," she purred, leaning too close, her fingers brushing the stem of her wineglass. "I hear you're a genius with a camera. Teach me your secrets?" Her voice was velvet, but her intent was steel. Nils shrugged, his voice cool as the Baltic breeze. "Hire a tutor, Freja." His dismissal was polite but firm, and I felt a flicker of triumph. But then, under the table, I saw it, her foot grazing his leg, a bold, deliberate move. My heart sank, a cold weight settling in my chest. Nils didn't flinch, didn't move. Did he not notice? Or did he not care? The restaurant's clink of cutlery and murmur of conversation faded as doubt coiled around me. Freja's eyes met mine, her smirk a silent taunt. "I can take him too." I forced a smile, stirring my risotto, but my appetite was gone. Nils reached for my hand under the table, his touch warm, but it couldn't erase the image of Freja's calculated move. As we left, the Stockholm night was crisp, the air sharp with the scent of pine and sea salt. Nils walked me home, his arm around my shoulders, but I was distant, replaying that moment, her foot, his stillness. My apartment, usually a sanctuary of sketches and soft music, felt claustrophobic. I lay awake, the city's lights filtering through my curtains, Freja's smirk burned into my mind. Was Nils truly mine, or was he another prize she'd claim? The doubt was a splinter, burrowing deeper with each passing hour. The next morning, over coffee at a cafe near Kungsträd Garden's blooming cherry trees, I confronted him. "Nils, do you find Freja attractive?" My voice was steady, but my fingers gripped the cup too tightly. He laughed, a soft sound, then frowned. "Is this a trap?" "Just answer," I pressed. He paused, his eyes searching mine. "She's pretty sure like half of Stockholm. But I only see you, Elin." His words were sweet, his dark hair falling into his eyes, but my instincts weren't quiet. Freja's games were never subtle, and I feared she'd already begun her next move. As I walked back through the city, the spires of Riddarholmen looming in the mist, I resolved to protect what was mine, not just Nils, but the version of myself I was fighting to become. Freja thought she knew my limits, but this time I'd play her game and win. That night, as Stockholm's lights flickered through my apartment's curtains, I lay awake, the image of Freja's foot grazing Nils's leg under the restaurant table replaying like a haunting film reel. The clink of wine glasses, her predatory smile, his unnerving stillness, it gnawed at me, a splinter of doubt burrowing deeper with each restless hour. Nils had held my hand as we left the Ostermalm restaurant, his touch warm against the chilly spring air, but it couldn't erase the question burning in my mind. Did he not notice Freja's bold move, or did he choose not to react? My Sodermalm apartment, usually a haven of sketchbooks and soft jazz, felt like a cage, the walls echoing my sister's taunt, "No one resists me." Freja Nilsson, my 27-year-old sister and a master manipulator disguised as a PR consultant, had spent our lives proving that, stealing my toys, my achievements, my first love. Now she was circling Nils Eriksson, the one man I dared to believe was mine. The next morning, I met Nils at our usual cafe near Kungsträd Garden, where cherry blossoms dusted the cobblestones like pink snow. The pale spring sun struggled through Stockholm's clouds, casting a soft glow on his dark hair as he sipped his espresso. I steadied myself, my fingers tracing the rim of my coffee cup, and asked, "Nils, do you find Freja attractive?" My voice was calm, but inside a storm raged, fear that Freja's charm had already sunk its claws into him. He laughed, a soft, disarming sound, then frowned, his dark eyes narrowing. "Is this a trap, Elin?" "Just answer," I pressed, my heart thudding. He leaned back, considering. "She's pretty sure like half the women in Stockholm. But she flirts?" "I only see you." His words were sweet, his gaze steady, but my instincts screamed. Freja's games were never subtle, and I'd learned the hard way that her beauty was a weapon, wielded with precision. I nodded, forcing a smile, but the splinter of doubt grew sharper. Days later, Freja barged into my apartment uninvited, her floral perfume invading the space like an unwelcome guest. She moved with the confidence of someone who owned the world, blending a smoothie in my kitchen as if it were her own. "Is Nils coming over?" she asked, her eyes gleaming with that familiar predatory glint. I nodded, watching her closely, my sketchbook abandoned on the counter. When Nils arrived, his camera bag slung over his shoulder, Freja pounced, her voice honeyed as she quizzed him about his latest photo shoot, a series capturing Stockholm's frozen canals at dawn. "Your work is stunning," she purred, leaning against the counter, her blonde hair catching the light. "You must teach me your secrets." Her praise was laced with intent, a lure cast with practiced ease. Nils offered a polite smile, his response curt, "It's just work, Freja." I stayed quiet, my trust fraying like the edges of an old canvas, but I watched every move, her calculated tilt of the head, his careful distance. When she left, her perfume lingered, a reminder that she was never truly gone. Tension snapped when a friend sent me a photo from a gallery event in Norrmalm. Freja, in a sleek black dress, was laughing too close to Nils, her hand grazing his arm as they stood by a wall of abstract paintings. The caption read, "Your sister's at it again, Elin." My stomach churned, the Stockholm skyline outside my window blurring through a haze of betrayal. Was Nils playing her game, or was he just another pawn in Freja's endless quest to win? I couldn't sit still any longer. I needed proof, not promises. The next evening, during a study session in my apartment, I set a trap. As Nils and I pored over design theory texts, I excused myself to the bathroom, leaving my phone on the table, its recording app discreetly running. Freja predictably arrived minutes later, her knock sharp, her smile too bright. I lingered in the hallway, heart pounding, listening through the cracked door. "Ellen's sweet, Nils," Freja whispered, her voice low and seductive, "but she's safe boring. You're an artist like me. I can make you feel alive." The words were a knife twisting in my chest. I braced for Nils's response, my breath caught in my throat. His voice cut through, firm and unyielding. "Back off, Freja. I'm hers." Relief flooded me, warm and overwhelming, but her parting whisper chilled my blood. "This isn't over." I slipped back into the room, my face a mask of calm, but inside I was reeling. Freja didn't want love, she wanted victory, and I was done being her battlefield. That night, I replayed the recording, Nils's words a lifeline, but Freja's threat a storm cloud on the horizon. I paced my apartment, the wooden floors creaking under my restless steps, the city's hum a distant lullaby. Freja's games had always been about power, not affection. Her theft of Victor, my chef boyfriend, was proof. Those photos she'd sent, her arm around him outside his Gamlistan restaurant, weren't about love. They were about proving she could take what was mine. But Nils was different. His quiet intensity, his photographs that captured the soul of Stockholm's hidden corners, had drawn me in a way Victor never could. Yet Freja's whisper lingered, a poison seeping into my trust. I needed to protect what we had, not just from her, but from the doubts she planted. The next day, I met Nils at a park near Djurgården, where birch trees swayed in the spring breeze. We sat on a bench, the scent of damp earth and blooming lilacs heavy in the air. "Freja's trying to get to you," I said, my voice steady but my hands trembling. "I heard her last night." His eyes darkened, his jaw tightening. "She's been pushy, Ellen. I didn't want to worry you." "You should have told me," I replied, sharper than I meant. He nodded, his hand finding mine. "I'm sorry. She creeps me out, honestly. I only want you." His sincerity was a bomb, but the splinter remained. Freja's games were escalating, and I needed to be smarter. I began watching her closely, noting her patterns, her unannounced visits, her calculated appearances at Nils's gallery openings. One afternoon, at a cafe in Vasasten, I saw her phone left on the table when she stepped away to take a call. Heart racing, I opened her messages, my fingers fumbling. There it was, a thread with E, vague but damning. "Keep him close, she'll break soon," one read. The bet's still on. My blood ran cold. Freja was plotting with someone, likely Eric, Victor's cousin, a gallery curator who'd clashed with Nils over a botched exhibition years ago. I snapped photos of the texts, my hands shaking but my resolve steel. Freja wasn't just after Nils. She was orchestrating a war, and I'd need more than words to fight back. As I walked home through Stockholm's twilight, the spires of Riddarholmen glowing against the fading light, I felt a shift. Freja thought she could break me, as she always had. But this time, I wasn't the quiet sister sketching in the shadows. I was Elin Andersson, and I'd play her game, only I'd play it better. I was done being Freja's pawn. 4 years, her victories, stealing my dolls, my awards, my loves, had left me shrinking, sketching my dreams in the margins of her spotlight. But now, standing in my Sodermalm apartment, the Baltic breeze carrying the faint scent of sea salt through the open window, I resolved to play smarter. Freja Nilsson, my 27-year-old sister and PR consultant, thought she could unravel my relationship with Nils Eriksson, the photographer who'd become my anchor. She was wrong. I had proof of her game, and I'd use it to end her reign. First step was honesty. I showed Nils the recording from my trap, the one where Freja whispered her seductive poison. "Ellen's boring. I can make you feel alive." His jaw tightened as he listened, his dark eyes flashing with anger. "I'm sorry, Ellen," he said, his voice low, rough with guilt. She's been pushy, cornering me at events. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to stress you. I studied him, his calloused hands gripping the edge of my kitchen table, his camera bag slouched by the door. You should have, I said, softer than I felt. No more secrets. He nodded, his hand finding mine, and for a moment the warmth of his touch steadied me. But Freja's parting whisper, "This isn't over," still echoed, a warning I couldn't ignore. The real breakthrough came at a cafe brunch in Vasastan, where Freja's carelessness gave me the upper hand. She'd invited me to a trendy spot on Sankt Eriksgatan, its tables crowded with Stockholm's creative elite, the air humming with espresso and ambition. As we sat, her phone buzzed on the table, left unlocked when she stepped away to take a call. My heart raced, but I seized the moment, opening her messages. There it was, a thread with Erik Lindgren, Victor's cousin, a gallery curator with a grudge against Nils from a botched university exhibition years ago, where Nils's photos had outshone Erik's curated pieces. The texts were vague but damning. "Keep him close, she'll break soon," Erik wrote. The bet's still on. Another mentioned Freja's side schemes, forging art credits, rigging university awards to boost her reputation. My hands shook as I photographed the messages, the clatter of plates and laughter fading into a distant hum. This wasn't just about Nils. Freja and Erik were orchestrating a war to destroy us both, a cruel wager on my heart. I left the cafe, the spring air sharp with the scent of blooming lilacs, my resolve hardening like the cobblestones under my feet. Freja thought she could outmaneuver me, but I'd turn her game against her. I sent the photographed text to the university's ethics board, attaching a detailed account of her manipulations, my fingers trembling as I typed. It wasn't revenge, it was justice, a reclaiming of the space she'd stolen from me for years. Freja's final move came at a gallery opening in Norrmalm, a sleek venue where Stockholm's art scene mingled under chandeliers and abstract paintings. She arrived in a black dress, its lines sharp and powerful, her confidence a blade honed by years of winning. As Nils fetched drinks, she cornered me near a canvas splashed with crimson and gold. "You think you've won, Elin?" she hissed, her blue eyes glinting like ice. "I never lose." Her words, once a dagger, now sounded desperate. I smiled, calm despite the pulse pounding in my ears. "You already have, Freja." Earlier that day, I'd confirmed the ethics board had received my evidence, their investigation already underway. She didn't know it yet, but her empire was crumbling. Then came the moment that broke her. As Nils returned, Freja made her boldest play. In front of the crowded gallery, she grabbed his collar and kissed him, her lips a calculated strike. The room froze, glasses pausing mid-sip, murmurs rising like a tide. Nils shoved her away, his shout echoing off the polished floors. "Are you mad?" His face was a storm of rage and disgust, his eyes seeking mine in the crowd. I stood rooted, my heart steady, I knew he was mine. The moment, captured on a dozen phones, went viral on campus social media by morning, hashtags like #SisterSabotage and #StockholmScandal trending across Instagram, and Freja's carefully curated image, PR queen, untouchable star, began to crack, comments dissecting her history of manipulation. The scholarship she stole, the votes she rigged, the friendships she fractured. By Monday, the university's ethics board acted. Erik faced a disciplinary hearing for his role in the scheme, his curator career teetering. Freja was summoned to answer for her fraud, forged credits, rigged awards, and now a false narrative against Nils. The verdict was swift: expulsion for academic misconduct and false reporting. Her name, once emblazoned on every leadership board, vanished from Konstfack's halls. Whispers followed. Some said she'd fled to Copenhagen, others claimed she'd broken down. I didn't care to know. For the first time, I was free of her shadow. As I walked through Gamla that evening, the cobblestones glowing under lantern light, I felt a weight lift. Freja's final act, meant to humiliate me, had backfired, exposing her to the world she'd tried to rule. Nils met me at our cafe, his camera bag slung over his shoulder, his smile tentative but real. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said, his voice soft. "I didn't want her near me." I believed him, not because I had to, but because his actions, his rejection of her, his loyalty through the storm spoke louder than her lies. Stockholm's skyline shimmered beyond, a reminder that I was no longer the sister who lost. I was Elin, and I was rewriting my story. The fallout from Freja's gallery kiss and her expulsion from Konstfack rippled through my world like a stone dropped in Stockholm's calm waters. My sister, Freja Nilsson, the PR consultant who'd spent years outshining me, had finally lost. Her empire of charm and manipulation crumbled under the weight of her own schemes, exposed by the viral video of her rejected advance on Nils and the damning evidence I'd sent to the university's ethics board. Yet, as I walked through Gamla Stan's lantern-lit streets, the victory felt bittersweet. Freja's absence left a void, not of love, but of the familiar ache she'd carved into my life since childhood. Our mother called a week later, her voice trembling over the phone. "Elin, Freja's in Copenhagen," she said, her words heavy with worry. "She's not eating, barely speaking. Can't you forgive her? She's your sister." I stood in my Sodermalm apartment, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the faint salt of the Baltic breeze. For years, I'd been the good daughter, swallowing Freja's sabotage to keep the peace. But this time I refused. "She's not my sister, not anymore," I said, my voice steady. "She's your daughter, and you let her hurt me." Mother gasped, her silence a confession. "Please, Elin," she whispered, but I ended the call, my heart heavy but unyielding. Lesson 1. You don't owe forgiveness to those who choose to hurt you. I'd spent too long apologizing for Freja's chaos, and now I was choosing myself. Days later, an envelope slid under my door, its Copenhagen postmark unmistakable. Freja's handwriting, once bold, was tentative. "You were always better, Elin. Not prettier, not smarter, just cleaner. I ruined everything, but I'm trying to change." Her words stirred something, pity perhaps, but not regret. I sat by my window, the Stockholm skyline glowing in the dusk, and wrote back, "Be well." Not for her, but for me, a final act of closure to seal the wound she'd left. Lesson 2. Closure isn't about reconciliation, it's about freeing yourself from someone else's story. Nils Eriksson, my photographer boyfriend, stayed by my side through the storm. One evening, as we sat on a bench overlooking Djurgården's canals, he handed me a small box. "It's not a ring," he teased, his dark eyes warm. Inside was a silver bracelet, its single lock charm glinting in the fading light. "You're not someone who needs rescuing," he said, fastening it on my wrist. "But you're safe now." The gesture wasn't possession, it was a promise of trust, a reminder of the bond we'd forged. Lesson 3. True love doesn't cage you, it gives you space to grow. Nils's loyalty, his rejection of Freja's advances, had proven he saw me, not her shadow. Graduation came in June, a crisp Stockholm morning where the air carried the scent of blooming linden trees. As I walked across the stage at Konstfack, my cap slightly askew, I felt Freja's shadow lift. I was no longer the sister who lost, I was Elin Andersson, graphic designer, survivor of a war I hadn't chosen. Lesson 4. Your worth isn't defined by those who try to dim it, but by the strength you build in response. The applause echoed, and in the crowd, Nils's smile was my anchor, his camera capturing the moment I claimed my own light. We moved to Oslo that summer, chasing new horizons. I joined a sustainable art collective, designing posters that blended Nordic simplicity with environmental passion. Nils photographed Norway's rugged landscapes, his images of fjords and midnight sun gracing gallery walls. Our life was quiet joy, mornings with strong coffee, evenings exploring Oslo's waterfront, the Aker River reflecting our shared dreams. Freja's echoes faded, replaced by my own voice, steady and sure. Lesson 5. Healing doesn't erase the past, but it builds a future where you choose who you become. As I stood in our Oslo apartment, sketching by a window overlooking snow-dusted streets, I realized Freja's betrayal had been a brutal gift. She'd meant to break me, but instead she'd pushed me to rebuild stronger. This story of overcoming family drama inspires you. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Drop your country in the comments. Let's see how far this journey reaches. Your support fuels more tales of resilience, so hit that button and join our community.